Hey, it's Karina Reichman, and you are listening to Comes a Time with Oteil Burbridge and Mike Fenoya. If you're digging the podcast, do these guys a favor and review and subscribe. It means a lot. Be sure to follow the pod on social media, YouTube, and if you're joining for bonus episodes and exclusive content, go to patreon.com/comesatimepod and get on the bus. And now, here's Mike and Oteil.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Comes the Time podcast. That's Oteil.
And that is Mike. And we had some great guests on the pod from Fish, Paige McConnell, and from Ziggy Marley and Vita Blue, Adam Zimmon. We had them on to talk a little bit about our dear friend, brother, bandmate, Russell Batiste, the drummer with Vita Blue, who recently passed away. I got to go to the funeral and I met Paige there. And the night before, we just reminisced. We got together late night after I landed. And then Russell had just a classic New Orleans funeral, I can't even explain it all. Really, it was crazy. All I know is when I have my funeral, I want people to wear outfits like that because we saw some classic stuff you would only see in New Orleans.
Yeah, some of the video you sent me, I was like, geez. Yeah, it's a celebration of life was what it is. It's not.
And that was the part in the church.
You sent me church. I love that you sent me church video. But what's cool is I feel like that's the way it's supposed to be. It's a celebration of life instead of like a lamenting death or whatever. It's so funny how everyone does it different. Vikings send you out and on a boat and set the boat on fire. New Orleans is like a party, a dance, a parade,
the second
singing,
line.
Eating. Irish people drink and Italian people make too much ziti and wear black.
I like the Chinese. The Chinese wear white and they do it all. That's what I heard when I was younger, that it was kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
They're white and it's more like a celebration of that we got to have a life here and got to experience this. Yeah. It's really crappy for some people. And if it was good for you, I felt that a lot at Russell's. I hate to even call it a funeral.
Celebration of life.
Yeah, maybe it should. Maybe that's where we should go with it because it definitely felt like that, and it was. It was a really good podcast. That we reminisced about Vita Blue and really fun, very meaningful.
Very cool to hear the story, and it was. I texted you after just about how awesome it was to listen to the reminiscing about the beginning of that project. That's hearing Paige explain you guys meeting for the first time and you and Russell. And just also I kind of like the track on the first album, Where's Popeyes? So that was kind of cool to hear the origin of that. So you guys are going to love it. And thank you, Paige and Adam and Russell. Thank you, Russell, for everything. We're on the Pantheon Podcast Network. Hope you guys are enjoying us. If you're enjoying us, share and like and rate. You can join us for bonus content at patreon.com/comesatimepod for a bonus episode each week. We have new merch. We have a lot of fun stuff planned. So hop on the bus and join us. Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Brought my I'm not wearing as well as Russell, but I brought my sweatshirt.
That's awesome.
Mine's probably a little cleaner than Russell's because I never really Russell wore his every day for the last 20 years.
He really did. Some of the videos that I get sent and the YouTubes are ones that pop up on social media. You see him wearing that Vita Blue sweat. He really did. He loved it, man. I've got my Vita Blue shot glass. I should run and get that.
Nice. I got one of those handy too. Yeah.
I had my hoodie that I wore nonstop. It was my favorite thing, and it's like a casualty of yet another item of clothing that I left in a dressing room on a tour stop. It's somebody's got it. I tried to chase it down, but hopefully somebody's wearing it in good health and spirits, or was psyched about it or something. I don't think there's a lot of them. So
I
brought my I'm over here where I have a bunch of stuff. So I got my Vita Blue T-shirt from the first gig there, the New Year's gig in 2001.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool. I put it on. It kind of fits.
Such a killer album. I love that album so much.
Before I was a twinkle in anybody's eye.
we had not heard of you, not Spam, not nobody.
Yeah, but you guys completed us, man. I will never forget those Miami sessions. And man, yeah, you really did complete us. It made that was such a added like pow,
Well, I think I was like
Adam wasn't there. Yeah.
I was forced in post to play the shows.
Oh, that's right.
Probably correctly, like our manager Melanie or Andrew, I was away, and that whole thing of like, well, there's this guitar player and he's kind of a one of the main parts of the band or whatever. I could easily imagine Paige and O'Teal being like, we chose not to have a guitar player.
No, that's not O'Teal. If anybody said it, not O'Teal.
Yeah. Well, okay, but I could easily see that logic, and they were kind enough to like let me show up for like 2 rehearsals before going on stage, and I was just like, what the hell am I doing?
Thank God we did, because that it really was. I'm with O'Teal. That we really needed you in there to round it out and flesh it out for us.
Yeah, because even when we didn't have Spam again, there's something about that interaction, which we were talking about this the other day, just about having imposter syndrome and stuff, and I go through it all the time. But you never have to ever worry about that, because having played with Russell Batiste and with just the Marleys and all those people, like, you can't play with those people if you can't hang. Like, they will tell you immediately, as you well know, Adam.
I guess really enough about me, but imposter syndrome kind of begins and ends at the last day of the tour, and then before the first day of the next one, or when you're not in the room, and you're supposed to be like, okay, now, parlay the stuff you do into like, continuing, livelihood or whatever. That's when imposter syndrome is like becomes real, when you're putting, anyway, enough about me.
Yeah, but man, Russell, I really wish you could have been there at the second line and the service and everything, Adam. I was texting Adam video and pictures as it was going on,
Well, that stuff you told me about, I mean, it meant so much to be closer that way, and that you were doing that, and that Paige was there, and seeing that stuff was, I mean, it was so apt also, and beautiful, and but yeah, and sort of that story you told me about all the drumline stuff, and I mean, just like it helped me. I spent the whole day kind of with Russell that day, and it, including this radio show that O'Teal turned me on, that was doing a tribute to him, playing tracks he played on that I'd never heard. And I was going through videos and pictures, and I don't know, it really helped. It really made a difference, and was wonderful to see, because Russell shows up when you're with Russell and you're playing. It's sort of like being in the midst of just a storm of music and energy that you're just trying to sort of hold on to, or trying to keep up with. And so outside of it, I don't know, just getting to see that stuff and doing, it sort of made it all make sense a little more too, and appreciate it and have gratitude over it, which helped.
Paige,
New Or-
when you were considering Vita Blue and the first seed started to kind of come to your mind, was the band members already something that you had kind of set in your mind and in your thoughts?
When this started in 2001, right at that moment, I think Fish was on hiatus then. We weren't playing, and I knew I wanted to do some sort of a project, and I didn't know exactly how or what it would be, but I did. I had met Russell in 1998. I went down to play on a track for a benefit album that the New Orleans Musicians Clinic was putting out. And this woman, Bethany Boltman, sort of was working with my dad. My dad had helped set up the clinic down there in New Orleans for the Musicians Clinic. And so for this track, we didn't have any material, and this band was put together, and it was me and Mike Gordon and Russell and Art Neville and Bill Summers and George Porter. So it was the six of us. So it was two drummers, two bass players, and two keyboardists, which is a kind of an interesting band. And
Only in New Orleans.
so we went and recorded a track at a really cool studio, which is no longer there anymore, called the Egyptian Room in New Orleans. It was up on the 10th floor of this old building, and it had been a Masonic temple, and so it still had all the iconography and the eyes and everything that Masons are into, and we were sort of in the big room, which is where they had their meetings and that sort of a thing. Worked for 2 days, did this track, and just getting to know those guys a little bit. I was already such a huge fan of Art Neville, so this was a big deal for me to be in the room with him and to be playing on a track with him. And I had seen Russell play 10 years earlier in 1988 when he was playing with the Meters. I saw him play. I think he was, if not a teenager, he was in his early 20s at that point.
So,
but he was
Wow.
playing with the Meters. I saw him at the Channel in Boston, and he was just phenomenal. And I was far away, but I was just like, man, this kid is an unbelievable drummer. And then to get to play with him 10 years later there in New Orleans with Art Neville and George and everybody, it was kind of mind blowing. And I saw after that, for the next year or two, I saw the Funky Meters a few times, and it just kind of clicked. Now I'd known Oteil for a long time. I'd known Oteil since 1991 was, I think, the first time we met each other at the Rockfish when the unit was playing down there, the Aquarium Rescue Unit, and so we'd been friends and played a little bit together and done some shows and done the tour and all that. But it just kind of came to me all at the same time, like, oh my God, could you imagine if I could get Russell and Oteil together playing somewhere? And so I can't remember if I asked Oteil first or if I asked Russell first, but Russell was in New York and I was living in New York at the time. Russell was playing in New York, and I went down to see him, I think with the Meters, maybe at Irving Plaza or something like that. And I went backstage and I said, hey, I'm going to put this band together. And Bill was with him at that point. Bill, his friend who ended up on the road with us, who we saw down at the funeral.
Yeah, yeah.
And exactly. And he was like, Russell, you really ought to do this, man. This sounds like a cool gig. You really ought to play this gig. Because Russell was apprehensive about. He was, he stayed in New Orleans a lot. It was, for him to get out of town was kind of an effort. It didn't seem that it came naturally to him, where he wanted to leave and wanted to go do stuff. It felt like he was always more comfortable at home in New Orleans. and he agreed to do it. Oteil agreed to do it, and we set up a recording studio date down there in September of 2001. And we were supposed to fly down on September 12th, 2001.
Wow.
And as history has it, September 11th happened the day before, and it was terrible, and everything was disrupted, and all the flights were canceled, and that went on for about 3 days. And I was like, are we going to get down to do this session? And we did. We got down. I think I flew out on the 15th, and we probably started on the 16th down there at Piety Street Studios in the 9th Ward in New Orleans. And I don't think, if I remember correctly, I don't think that Oteil and Russell had ever met before that day. I think that was the first day that they met. And Russell was such a force of nature, just in every way, just larger than life, just in talking to him. He presented in that way. And that day I remember so distinctly Oteil playing bass and playing some really nice chords and maybe singing along and just sort of by himself, and Russell just sitting in a folding chair in front of him, just enamored with Oteil's playing. And it was that relationship which sort of made the whole thing work, because there was such respect between you guys, between me and you, and all the way around, all three of us at that point. Yeah. There was just a lot of respect, and somehow the chemistry worked, and that was how it all started.
What a great vibe in that studio too, man. Like I love New Orleans so much, we talked about that the night before Russ's funeral and stuff. And Piety, man, there was a strong vibe there in between us. And I remember the hotel and it's just like, it's a strong memory, man.
Yeah.
It's like one of those movies that really affects you hard. It leaves a taste in your mouth.
Yeah. And it went on, and it was because of all the other stuff that was going on in the country. It was really nice to have this thing that we could work on that was positive and joyful. And it was really, a lot of laughs. But New Orleans at that point, there were no tourists there because there had been no flights or anything like that. So the streets were empty. And after the studio, after the session or whatever, we'd go get some beignets or whatever we were doing down there. And, it was, there was a little bit of a contrast and a little bit of it was a haunting kind of a feeling down there. But the joy from day one with the band was undeniable.
Yeah. And the road, oh my goodness, man.
Oh, to hear the sound of Oteil and Russell playing together, for the first time, like the energy. I mean, I'm thinking about it, hearing that story, I'm just like, that is a moment.
Yeah.
Know what? It always felt that fresh though. Like when we were in the studio down at Criteria, and now we've gotten back together after a while, and I just remember feeling this, like a lot had changed since then, but I remember this. I just remember it always feeling new whenever we did it.
Yeah.
And it's
Russell, that's to me, it's like there's no instance where Russell sits down at a drum kit and there is like anything in the way of him playing. You know what I mean? Like, meaning as musicians, like, you're bogged down by the world, like getting your head really being a clear sort of vessel for what you're doing is like, especially as you get older, is a real like hard thing to do. For me personally, I think for everybody in general, most people, but not Russell. There's not like one instance where I think I've ever heard him sound anything less than just like completely kind of from the universe, like possessed when he's playing music, like.
It's interesting to hear too, that like that was the first time you guys ever met, and clearly that means it was the first time you guys ever played together, because as a listener it makes me think like, well, what were the recording sessions like? Because some of those tunes, even the way they end, like Most Events Aren't Planned, and some of the other ones, it's just like, it's, you could hear you and Russell O'Teal like really bouncing off each other quite a bit. It was like an immediate thing, huh? You two?
Well, I think it's like fortunately, because obviously Colonel Bruce always comes up, but in that the way we were doing it too, I it was easier for me to just get in that mindset of, if there's a tempo and I can find out what key we're in, then we just go. And Paige really like there was always that part included. There would be like a couple of songs or something, but there was always these things where it would just go, and maybe you had like a keyboard, one of those synthesizer,
Yep.
like loop things or whatever. We're just playing like kids playing, and that's why I say it always felt new. I would always kind of revert back to that, and so it makes it easier when you're doing it with someone for the first time, because you don't know what's happening anyway, so you're just kind of floating with no floor, and then you kind of come together and tune into each other, but I had seen him play before, but yeah, you're just, it was a lot of I had a lot of anticipation that always bubbled into like nervousness. That's good.
It didn't show. It didn't show. When we were doing that for that session, I had just gotten a new synthesizer, and I had gone through and marked some notes, or these are cool sounds, or these are cool effects or loops that we can work with. And there, like you said, there were maybe 2 or 3 songs that I had with chord progressions, but the rest of it was just created from what we did there. So the songs like Most Events Aren't Planned, or any of them really, CJ3, or so many of them were just jams that were edited together, and then we found a way to put, I put some lyrics on top or whatever. It was almost a backwards process. We didn't go into the studio with a bunch of songs. We went into the studio and with a couple of songs, then created the rest from nothing. Where's Popeyes or whatever it was. And we had some. I had set up some microphones in the control room so that you just hear, just to get Russell talking, just to get some of that vibe, and then. And I'm pretty sure he knew we were taping.
Yeah.
but it didn't affect, or maybe it did in a way. But he didn't have a problem with it. He just amped it up even more, knowing that he was on tape. So
that whole thing comes from. I honestly think he would have done exactly the same thing, whether the tape was rolling or he knew it or not. He's like, when I get to town, speaking like he's not in New Orleans, the first thing I ask is, where the fuck is Popeyes?
That's how the song starts. I love it.
We still talk about when we were at his funeral. I was like, I feel like we should go to Popeyes right now. That'd be the right thing to do after the second line.
Yep.
You sent me that same day of his funeral. You sent me an interview. I can't even remember. It was on YouTube with Russ, fairly recent. And the guy brought up, he's like, and Russell mentioned Vita Blue, and then the guy like circled back to Vita Blue, and he ended up just talking about Popeyes. Like he didn't. Vita Blue doesn't really the name came up, but he just went into Popeyes, and with the guy doing the interview, and he's just like, they're talking about like, oh, I get the biscuit, and and then it moved on from there. It was like
all roads lead to Popeyes.
It was perfect.
Begins and ends at Popeyes. That's great.
Terrapin is Popeyes.
That's station. Hey.
Yeah.
Quality chicken.
Well, but that thing of him like had the mic in the control room, I realized again that day listening to other tracks, because on you know, crossing lines when we do his tune, there's always like you hear him kind of him yelling the sections at us because he's just teaching it to us and we're learning it. And then during that radio show that was like paying tribute to Russell and playing tracks, he's yelling all over those too, because he's just teaching he's like telling everybody down like that. You just and you hear it, and there's even one like a Harry Connick tune, and I swear to God, you hear Russell like in the back. You know?
I don't think there is a video or recording of it without him yelling, because the one John Batiste posted, he doesn't yell, but the very first count off, like somebody clearly blows it, and he's like, he gives him this look that's almost a yell, you know?
Come on.
And then he just crushes it when he starts double clutching. I'm so grateful for all these things that people posted. Thank you, because when he starts clutching, man, you just realize you either got to do that with him or you didn't. I felt such a kinship with all these people in New Orleans that I already felt a kinship with. But at Russell's funeral, it was different. Like John Gross and stuff. I'm like, we know these things. We felt it. That clutching hit us in the chest and the legs and the butt, you know, like that is, and it's so sad that it takes that somebody going to make you really value, you know, but I feel so blessed, man, that we got to do that together.
What was tour like going out with him? And
everybody's face when you said
yeah, I know. I've been waiting to ask this question. I'm like, we'll give it 20 minutes.
Can I tell one quick thing? I felt like we were in Nebraska. Like, I don't know if we ever played Nebraska, but it felt like we were way, like if we could have been in Nebraska, we were in Nebraska. And then I think he asked Brad Sands, Brad, I need some glow in the dark sticks. And I was like, dude, we're in the middle of is that a thing? You know, like my mind's going and Brad came up with it, whoever found him, and he had him. I was like, well, shut my mouth. It must be a thing. And Russell, but it was just so out of the blue. And I thought, this guy's truly nuts.
You know, he didn't, like I said before, he felt more comfortable in New Orleans in general. I think he was a homebody, and he was very comfortable in his surroundings and with his people and his contacts and everything he needed there, and Popeyes and whatever it was that he needed, it was there for him. But he was, and I felt, especially in that first tour where we really didn't know each other so well. You know, we had just done the session down in at Piety Street, and then we did a little bit of rehearsal, I think, in Vermont, and then we played those shows at New Year's at the Roseland Ballroom, which was great. But then that was just sort of a one-off. Those were both sort of one-off events. And then when we went out for our first tour, which I think was probably not that long after that, February or something like that, he sometimes had a hard time being away from home at that point. And I would bring people with him. Like, I need Bill. I need George, or whoever it was.
George!
You need to have his people with him, someone that was like a touchstone for him that he could relate to, or that he felt like he could talk to. And, you know, if we'd gone out again, last time I let him bring that girlfriend he had at the time, and it was kind of a show that was its own thing. But
girlfriend might be a little loose use of the term.
Well, she was a woman. Anyway, I always felt like, well, I need to do this stuff for Russell in order to help him feel comfortable, even though sometimes it's like, people he would bring out would be creating so much more chaos than would have been happening if we just sort of went out on our own. So I think if we had gone out again, there would have been more of a, no, I'm going to get you a drum tech. I'm going to get you. I'm 20 years into this. It's like, it's always
hilarious
with Russell, but he would hang out in the back of the bus. He really liked that, and sort of take it over, and that was his space. And we'd go into parties, and I remember we had a party here at Brad's house before we went out or somewhere on tour, and he wouldn't even come in the house. So just he stayed on the bus and just was like, I'm not going in there. He didn't know people that well and didn't feel that comfortable. But over the years, he did come out of the shell, and he did open up, and he did feel more comfortable with us. And there was just, you talk about, this isn't tour, but we were recording at Criterion down there in Miami. It was just, he was just running the show. It was his show, and we were all lucky to be a part of it.
It's like John Belushi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they can't help it. They just are
the center of gravity.
Yes, it's just.
Yeah, they're the sun.
Remember, he would be on the bus and he would be talking to somebody. Somebody would call him.
Yeah,
and then he's the one that got me on the phone lanyard. And he had his phone and his keys and his pass and like everything on this lanyard. It weighed like 12 pounds.
Yeah.
But, he could get loaded and not lose his stuff, So someone would call the phone and then he'd be like, hold on. And then he just let the phone drop and hang on the lanyard. And then he would talk to us for like 15 minutes. Just leave the person on. And he'd pick up the phone and be like, I'll call you right back. That's a wrap. And then he had
a flip phone on a lanyard too.
It was just like.
I mean, I like my. So that the first time when I met you guys in Miami, and I was just like, it was sort of like, okay, we'll have 2 days of rehearsal, and we're playing the first show, I think, in Miami, and the whole thing, I was just like, wow, what is, and we, it takes time to get to know people. I'm just trying not to, be bad or just to try and fit in and because those guys had all been in the studio together a little bit, but we get on the bus. So we play in Miami and we get on the bus to go to like, I think it was, what is it, Janice Landing? Where is that? St. Pete or something. So not very far. And it's like 11 o'clock in the morning. There's like a bus call. And I'm just like, well, what do you do when you're new on a tour? Is you get to know people, you hang. So I go in the back and Russell's there and he has this like blunt, this like his just normal morning startup, right? And which is, it doesn't phase, you wouldn't know it whether he's and so I'm like, okay, well, I'm like getting to know you, like as if Russell even is thinking, like gives a shit, whatever. But I'm just like, hey, everybody, how's it going? So I sit back there with Russell and I smoke this blunt with him and I am just destroyed. Like all the way to the show, like that show was like one of the worst shows I've ever played in my life. Like I could barely get through it just from like my 11 o'clock hang with Russell. like, and I never forget it. Like I don't think I've ever been that black, like just like, and I was exhausted, it's just like the whole day, it just ruined me. And I was just like, oh my God, like what? And the back end of that tour also, we went to like some Korean restaurant in San Francisco, and I just Korean barbecue.
Yeah.
And they come around to take our order, and Russell's like, "Give me 4 Cokes." He orders 4 at once. It's like the Blues Brothers or something. You're just like, and you're like, and they're like four, like, yeah, just bring them all at once.
Gonna need all of them at the same time. Just so random.
Yes.
Oh, that's hilarious. I could
Crazy.
totally empathize with that too. Like when you join on a tour bus for the first time and it's like you get on the bus and you're kind of like, so what do I do? And you find your comfortable spot. And I can almost empathize with Russell as well. Like he liked the back page, like you said, like tour buses have that, like kind of, for those who've never been on one, there's like kind of that, like, it's almost like a meeting quarters, like the office of the bus. There's like a couch that goes around the back most of the time. And a lot of people like will throw their merch back there, things. And it's kind of like a little sanctuary. It's away from the rest of everybody else. Like if you're going to, head off
If you're
solo,
gonna hang
to
and
yeah.
smoke
Mhm.
blunts, you go to the back.
Kind of, it's like the patio. It's like the
Yeah.
patio of the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're not there and you're not in a bunk, everyone's just kind of face to face with each other a little bit like in the other
Yeah.
section. So.
It's very weird.
It's
But
cool.
Paige, of course, the most perceptive. Like it makes that idea that Russell actually didn't like leaving New Orleans, or that it wasn't as easy or natural as it was for us. Like I hadn't really dwelled on that much, so I appreciate what you're saying, and it kind of it makes a lot of sense. You want to be away from his like Hill Street Blues VHS tapes.
I've known a few guys like that, but some guys
Street Blues.
over
It's
the
true.
years, it's true. You get into your you get into this local thing, and it's hard to see out of or break out of or anything. And my old guitar player Mark Kimbrough was like that. He functioned better at home. The road was very uncomfortable for him. He did it with us. Thank God I got about 10 years out of him, but it finally broke him. It's like he couldn't.
And if you're Russell and you're in New Orleans and you're like the guy,
king,
it's like,
yeah.
And that music community, it's a whole other level too. So.
And my guitar player was like that too in Birmingham, Alabama. Like he was so revered, and it's a similar thing. But some, hey, I like being home more too. Shoot.
Well, and Paige, that's got to be a lot of like, it's courageous, and it's also probably like mother hen-ish in a way where you're like, I put these guys together, I put this band together. We don't all know each other that well. Let's head out on the road. It's way different from, Fish. You guys all live together and know each other. Like here's a whole different experience. That must have been pretty wild for you as well.
It was, I knew Oteil pretty well and had a pretty good sense of Oteil's temperament, I knew we got along. And
I wasn't the wild one. That's the crazy part.
No.
You'd only order 2 Cokes?
It was I don't know. It somehow it all worked. It all worked with us, and it worked because of the at that point it was the chemistry of the three of us, and it only got better when Adam joined. It really, I think there was probably, it was a little hollow, I think, with just the keyboard, on top and the bass and drums, and it really felt like it wanted at least a fourth member there to fill it out. But I guess it was courageous. I did, we did it.
The time you don't think about. Yeah, it's like, well, just.
I think the entire the taking the Spam All Stars that
Yes.
Which was my band, and you're getting Russell. You're also getting
Mercedes.
You're getting these 3, Tomas, Mercedes, and Lazaro.
Lazaro as well.
Let's not forget Lazaro. And these they are like, playing music with them is incredible.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Russell. It's just like it's like their second language. But they grew up. They literally they were like came, with nothing off the boat. So the experience of them touring and everything is a whole other thing too.
No, I remember that. two things about that. One is being with Lazaro, who was it Lazaro Alfonso, was that his last name?
Yes, yes.
And he was incredible percussion player, Cuban, as and Tomas as well. And but Lazaro really didn't speak any English. I mean, almost no English. And we toured the whole country. And I remember at one point we were in New York City, and it was as cold as it's ever been for me in New York City. I think it was 2 degrees out. It was freezing in New York. And 20 degrees feels freezing to me in New York, but 2 degrees.
Yeah.
And we ended up in the elevator together, and we were kind of talking. And he doesn't speak a word of English. I don't speak any Spanish. And he was explaining to me that he was going back to his room to get some more money or something that was expensive. And we communicate. It was like, yeah, New York is very expensive. That was about the end of it. But I remember walking.
The price of New York could transcend language for sure.
The first day we were in the studio to do our second album, the Spam All Stars album, the Illustrated Band. The first day, Lazaro and Tomas had some grooves going in the studio, and we recorded this at the Bee Gees studio, which was really cool. I thought Middle Ear down there in South
Super
Beach,
cool.
which is no longer there. Also, it's now an Enterprise car dealership. But I remember Russell sitting down with them, and he would start playing along. And after about 5 minutes, like, okay, I see what you're doing. I get, like the little inflections, the slight, the cultural, the subtleties of the culture of the rhythm that the Cuban guys were playing versus the New Orleans guy, and Russell kind of hearing it and hearing, oh, you're, this is pushed a little bit. Oh, this is held back. This is, I get it. I could, and they're playing along for about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, this is just unbelievable. And Russell really did, though. He was that kind of a musician. And so many of the stories about Russell are what a character he was, and what a a wild personality he had, and all of his antics. But one can't forget that he was one of the greatest musicians. I will never forget that he was one of the greatest musicians I will ever play with in my life. Yes. And he had a depth of knowledge and understanding and listening that I have a little bit with some other guys, but Russell was, he was brilliant. He was a brilliant player, and when he heard music like that, when he heard Lazaro and Tomas setting the grooves, and he sat down to try and put it into his, figure out how it worked for him and what he could play to play along with them. It was such a fascinating cultural experience for me.
Yeah, I have a really powerful, but this memory of that learning curve, especially in that tour that we did, because we played, there was a tune of his, it was called Russell's Tune, right?
Yeah.
And I just remember, I hadn't known, I remember him showing me, the guitar part on Just Kiss My Baby, right? And so like really how to play it right, because he could play it and it would sound right on guitar.
Just like Leo.
Exactly. Yeah. We go to play Russell's tune and he comes over to me and I'm like, well, how does it go? And he just goes to the keyboard and he just starts telling me about the harmony. And it's just like, a Wayne Shorter.
Yeah.
Wow. He's like, it's a Lydian chord. And then it's like these, and I'm just like, and it's like pretty much over my head that he's just like, it's this and this, and he's just kind of in his kind of brusque way. He's just like, now it's like the sharp part. And it's like, no, and when you play his tune, he'd be like, well, play that, put that F sharp on the top there and play that. I mean, he really arranging can hear everything, deep knowledge of harmony, deep. And I just wanted to share that because, Paige made me think of that. I mean, really, it wasn't just this incredible groove. It was everything. It was on any instrument.
Yes, he would play your instrument as well as you. It was crazy. Like I found one of the videos I sent you is one I found of him playing bass.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
he starts thumping, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And then all of a sudden, this whole fully formed bass line, you could have built a whole song around it, just pops. And it just went click. And I went, oh shit, that's as good as it. That's it. That's bass playing the right way. Like he's just a natural. I'm convinced he had perfect pitch. He could play horn, keyboard, guitar,
Yeah.
drums. He turned it. I have a memory of him turning his kit left-handed with us one time in rehearsal and just play it. And then one of the drummers, I mentioned it at the funeral, and one of the drummers down there that knew him said, yeah, well, he set everything up left and right. So either way he could play. So he could easily just like play. I think he was doing it just to mess with me, you know?
I think
And
on the spam of that tour, he had like a hi-hat left and a hi-hat right
yeah.
Yeah.
and a set, and he was doing that. I don't know like how he would decide or whatever, but when you consider like the crazy stuff, even just like, you know, that he played, like how proprietary it is to just him, that it would still be
Yeah.
like, you know, lefty and righty for drummers.
Yeah, to switch like that, because I'm left-handed and I play right. My son is left-handed, but he plays left. So when I switched his drum kit around left-handed, you know, I was trying to get your bass drum foot to be the hi-hat foot and vice versa. I could switch all the hand stuff. Switching the feet is murder. And the fact that he could set up left-handed because he had the double bass pedal. So he's just could. That's crazy, man. Fills everything. Just like there's no difference. Like if you closed your eyes, and then he'll get on the keyboard, or like I was doing a session with him, and there was like I think there was 3 horn players, and he's playing, and in the middle, and then he goes alto, E flat, E flat. So you know the clefs are different. The E flat and alto is not the same as the E flat on the piano, and he's calling it out in real time if the guy got the wrong note in his clef while playing drums. I was just like, so he has perfect pitch and he knows all the clefs. It's just like, what? It just keeps getting deeper with him. It's like,
I thought it was fascinating at the funeral when they were talking about his high school, St. Augustine, and the band and the drum line and all that stuff, and how when he first tried out for it, he didn't make the cut. Do you remember that story? And I was thinking, man, that must have been such a motivating factor for that guy, you know, something like that, because he never didn't make the cut again, you know.
Never. In fact, even in the drum line, after you left, Paige, at the very end of the thing, the drummers all ended up back at the corner of the church. And they were standing out there playing. And one of the drummers that I had played with, I think maybe at George's 75th birthday, I think his name is Jamal. He was talking to me and he said, you hear these drum cadences? They were playing all the drumline stuff. He goes, those are Russell's. And I was like, oh, he's like, all the drum guys for ever since Russell was in high school, know these cadences. And they have spread out. He's like, they went out to Grambling, and now as these people graduated from the high school and went on to different colleges, those cadences went out all over the country. And he said Russell could hear like a drum corps from somewhere and be like, that's mine. That's mine. That's mine. And then and the last thing he told me was, and Russell wrote those in high school. And dude, they were so funky, man. Like it's marching, it was so funky. I was just standing there. I just could barely hold back the tears just to think that his legacy, like from high school, if it had ended there, went out and spread out, you know, and then all that he did after that, it's just like he was a force of nature. And when you also consider the fact that New Orleans is the only place they allowed Africans to keep their drums in the country. All drumming, all of it comes from New Orleans. So when you hear somebody like John Gross from Papa Gross Funk make a statement like, Russell represents the past, present, and future of New Orleans drumming. When I read that, I was like, that's it. That's what. So all those legendary New Orleans drummers, you get to play with all of them when you play with Russell, and then you get to play where he took it from there. And he's really just something, man. A national treasure, right?
It's really amazing to hear you guys play together. 2001 seems like a million years ago, kind of. I mean, it really does.
Wow.
So much has changed, and so much is, But during the hiatus of Fish too, it was like really incredible to have, Vita Blue.
Anytime. It really was. It was special. And it went on, and I always imagined we were going to do more. I always imagined it would be another record and another tour, and we had dates that got canceled because of COVID, and I look back, and you always look back. I wish we'd done more. I wish we'd done this or that, but we did what we did. It was.
Yeah. When that call came for me, it's just like anytime Paige calls, and then when it's like I'm like that, whatever the cartoon silhouette is just left. I'm just like drop everything.
The cloud.
I'm out of here. Yes, that's it. I mean, there's no, it's like it's dreamland for me, or was.
Remember,
Remember
the first time we saw you for people that don't know, Adam's hair used to be red. And so Rush, the first time he saw your hair was white, he totally changed your nickname.
Well, Russ would have nicknames for a lot of people. I mean, those that don't know. And so in that band, there was, AJ was Maceo, and Adam was Red Top. And until he wasn't.
Until he wasn't. Well, he walked when we met at Criteria. When he showed up at Criteria, and my hair is like this, and he walked right by me, and I like Russell.
He was looking for Red Top.
Yeah.
And he wanted to. I think he was like had come off the plane. He had somebody with him, as he always does, and he was looking for like basically Popeyes or whatever he wanted to eat. It was like it wasn't up on his mind. Like I don't know that he expected to see me at all.
He has weed and then Popeyes.
Yeah, he's got to get things sorted. I mean, you got to get, once you land. I mean, that's always the case, right?
But then when he saw you, he's like, "What happened to your hair, man?
Yeah.
Ice cap."
And he had green hair, right? At that time.
Yeah, he had green.
He had bright green hair at that moment, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
So
right.
cool.
I forgot. I totally forgot.
I mean, there's always like an entrance. Because I think I have some memory. It might have been right. We played at Bonnaroo, or it was something where we had done shows, or we had a little break and did more shows. And when Russell showed up, he was just like, I don't know what had happened, but he's showing you crazy pictures on his phone. He might have been spent a night in jail or something, or some like. There was some really crazy thing, and he's just like, oh, look at this, man. He just kind of lands, and it's just this energy of I think maybe it was Bonnaroo, maybe it was somewhere else. I don't know, because maybe we broke up East and West Coast, and and he just shows you a picture on the phone, and he's got some crazy story, that's connected to it, and it's just that's it, it's just like good to see you, man. You know what I mean?
Like, you know, knowing we're never gonna get a group text like that again is his texts were just
Oh man, I opened up some of my old phones last night just to see some of my old text threads from Russell. And that's where I saw from 2018. It was just a picture of him with the green hair. That's how I remember that he had the green hair. But, you know, and then he had the green head, and they put the red dot like a pimento. He looks like an olive. Do you remember that? Right in the back of his head, he had like one red dot.
Wow.
It was a look, man.
it's like when you see Amadeus, you know, and Salieri realizes he's like, this is the genius, you know.
Yeah, that's
Like,
right.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
genius, dude.
Yeah, that's
Dude with the pimento.
Yeah.
Don't be fooled. 'Cause let
Yeah.
him sit down on your fucking instrument and see what happens. You know? But he
yeah.
would text all like he could send you a text that was nothing but emojis, and you would know exactly what he was saying and
Yeah.
hear his voice in your
No,
head.
yeah, he would write phonetically, you know, so the words weren't spelled as I would have spelled them, but exactly how he was talking, and I could just hear it as you're reading his text.
Oh, that's neat.
It was really
Yeah.
it's no joke. I mean, I never had a text experience like I did with Russell.
well, also that we were on a thread that had some other number for the last
Yeah.
like year or so or 2 years. And Russell sending me and OT a lot of texts, and there's another number, and I'm thinking, you know, I guess that's Paige, or you know, it's easy to imagine Paige having different numbers or different things. So
I don't.
and then and he does. So at some point after like a year or so, it just like it connected, and we realized that there's some random person that's just been like getting a year's worth of text from Russell.
I hope it's an old discontinued. I never investigate stuff like that either. I don't ask, you know, especially with Russell. Oh,
no,
God.
it was. I think
Somebody's got an archive.
I think it was when I actually reached out to the three of you, you two and Russell, when Vita Blue, the pitcher, passed away earlier this year.
That's right.
And
That's right.
and then it was like, and I didn't realize that there had been some other thread going that I've been off of. And Russell's like, "Is that you?" Just too funny.
Oh, man. I'm going to miss that dude so much.
He'd always send me these like, I got the power of Jah. Jah coming through.
And the videos, I loved the videos. I'm going to have to go back, and I haven't gone through those yet, Paige. I need to do that. Go back
nice
through my old threads.
To hear you guys all like, you know, come together and, you know, have a tribute to him too. That's really cool thanks for sharing this with all of us, you know. Super cool.
Yeah.
He deserves it, man. He deserves all the tributes he can get. I'm sure he's got more coming, you know.
Yeah. I'm great. Yeah, thank you. I'm grateful for it. I mean, it just drives home how, you know, unique and special it is. And it's, you know, it's sad, but it really does sort of give you the gratitude, because, you know, you were so lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he really loved us, man. You know, he really did. I had people tell me at his funeral, they're like, Oteil, he loves you so much, man. I mean, you know, he would show us in his text, you know.
No,
He's always wearing the Vita Blue sweatshirt and stuff. Like, I knew it. But like, you know, he was a really sweet human being. He was a sweet man. And it's crazy and all that stuff. I hope people will know that about him.
He was an incredibly sweet human being, and you know, he told me the story about during Katrina, rescuing some kitten off of an overpass on the highway or something, pulling over and like, taking care of this thing. And that's just who he was. He would help anyone. And over the years, I would visit him down there. And whenever I was in New Orleans, the guys he was playing with were kids. They were all young, and and he was bringing them in and showing them and yelling the chords at them or whatever he was doing, and teaching them. But it was he was so giving in so many ways.
Yeah, I really
Go ahead.
saw that with the drummers too. A lot of them would expressed it, like how much, like he always came back to that high school. He was really proud of it, and always with the kids, like he really was very, very, and that's a New Orleans thing. They have so many lineages of families, and it's so much
Yeah.
of that passing it on is built in, but it was very intentional with him. And I just came away with such a greater appreciation of him after that funeral, and hearing people talk about him,
Yeah.
and talking with them afterwards, and seeing the people that came out and how much he affected. I mean, you're talking about New Orleans royalty, man. Like it was heavy.
Well, here's to Russell, huh?
Yeah. Here's to David Russell Baptiste Jr.